So it seems that it's Orks and Custodes for the Warhammer 40k reveals today. 2 fun new character miniatures, 2 really big discount boxes, and a couple of teasers from their upcoming codexes. Let's talk about what we've got. Hello and welcome back to Warspecs Tactics, where today we're talking 40k model reveals, and for this one we're talking about the Warhammer World reveals, a sort of mini reveal show that wasn't quite a reveal show, given that it wasn't live streamed and just put up as a bunch of articles, given that they were going to be showing off some new miniatures at their 25th anniversary of their HQ store. This one was a bit uncertain as to exactly how much we'd get for Warhammer 40k. They hadn't told us what sort of game systems would be previewed, but I think that most people were perhaps anticipating the Custodes and Orks miniatures that got teased towards the end of December, and it seems that we've got that, plus some big Battleforce box sets and new Codex reveals. Perhaps the only small disappointment for me are that there's no Kroot here. Admittedly, we've got a far bigger range of them than I expected. All their standard kits redone, with no less than 3 versions of Shaper, and then 2 fun new units in the Lone Spear, plus the Kroot Rampagers. I was kind of hoping they might have a big central kit that's a bit of a big damage dealer to the army, like a Greater Narlock or something, but as you guys mentioned in the comments to my last video, they did confirm in one of their previous preview articles that we'd already seen the last Kroot reveal. It was in one of the subheadings on the Warhammer community thumbnail, even if they didn't actually say it in the article. Fingers crossed we won't have too much longer to wait for them. We've known about their Hunting Pack box set for a while, and Codex Tower Empire to come out to follow, no doubt. Today though, it was a fairly small set of reveals, nothing for Kill Team or Heresy so far, but the main focus was Warhammer 40k. The biggest reveals came for the Adeptus Custodes and the Orks. Besides them, I did think that the Gnome Blood Bowl team was kind of fun. That's where the Mystery Goose comes from. It looks like they've dialed the pets up to 11 with these guys. Foxes, badgers, and a little tree man guy. I did think that they were kind of fun. For the 40k stuff though, for the Adeptus Custodes we have a new shield captain, the one with the Melter Spear, the Codex cover reveal, and perhaps one of the most interesting things I think is a new Battleforce army box with the Terminators, Bags and Wardens in. I feel like this one might be quite a popular one given how popular their Christmas Battleforce box set was a year or so back. For the Orks we have really quite a fun miniature with a new sculpt for the Big Mek with a whole load of tech built into him, the Codex cover reveal for them, and a rather interesting Battleforce army with a mighty Stomper in it. That's going to be quite an unusual set there. Given Games Workshop's just announced another couple of interesting battle forces, I thought that these could be interesting ones for the next month's giveaway on the channel, and given that they've been announced in tandem, I thought I'd do one for 6 battle forces, each winner being able to choose either the Custodes battle force or the Orks one, whichever one they like most. That one will be announced on the 4th of April, and for details how to enter it, I will cycle back to this at the end of the video. Let's take a proper look at these models though. First up we have the Custodes shield captain here. He was the one teased in that spin around silhouette sort of teaser towards the end of December. We could kind of clearly see what he had going on in the first place, though it's certainly nice to see him in full gear, full colour and context, and find out a little bit more about him. Given that the Custodes already had a champion miniature in their line, I did think that there was a reasonable chance that he'd be a shield captain if he was just a standalone character miniature and not part of a squad. Shield captains are kind of in an interesting position though, as you can already build them from the Custodian Guard or the Custodian Warden box sets. So while this guy might be the only standalone character miniature for the Custodes like this, he's not actually adding a new unit to their roster or anything like that. Maybe a little bit of a shame there, given that the Custodes army isn't exactly an enormous one in the plastic range. Still though, it is fun to have a dedicated model for him. I quite like the shield, head crest and the Melter Spear, they're all quite fun. Given that they've revealed the Codex though, it does seem that this is likely going to be the only major release for the Custodes, besides the Battleforce box and perhaps an updated Combat Patrol. It kind of means that the Custodes are unlikely to get some sort of major release of their Forge World range in plastic, which I think is maybe one of the biggest dreams for the Custodes players. It'd be really nice to have some actual 40k versions of their dreadnoughts and tanks. At the moment they maybe feel like a bit less of a well-rounded army without those. For pricing for this guy, I'd guess it'd be £26, €34 and $42. That's based on the recent Space Marine Terminator Captain, which I'd consider him kind of equivalent to. And it sounds like he's going to be coming out in the Battleforce box set first, and then an individual release, probably with the Codex, a little bit later down the line. Miniature-wise, the main features of him are he gets a tactical rock, a big arcing feathered crest over the back of him. a cape draped over his shoulder. I think the Presidium shield that he gets is a fairly cool one with a big stylized eagle there. And he gets the Mighty Pyrothite Melter Spear, a Guardian Spear incorporating a Melter Gun. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like the model's got any sort of choice of war gear. I feel like that could have been nice just to give him the option of, say, a Castellan Axe or some of the various other things that the Shield Captain can be armed with. Seems like that would have been quite a good one to hit if they were going to actually make him as a standalone kit. Seems that the only option he gets is a bear head versus a helmeted head. I must admit that personally I'm not the biggest fan of the bear head version there, and I personally go helmeted myself. The main criticism I've seen for this guy is that just in his posing and things, he maybe just feels a little bit squat to the ground. I think it might be at least partly the camera angle that they've taken him at, plus the way that his shield and his spear held out make him a bit more square and chunky. Given that he's a custodian miniature standing on a tactical rock, he will be standing fairly tall, and the head crest will add to that. I think he looked better in the image on the previous slide, to be honest. Maybe makes him feel a bit more like he's lunging forward with the spear, as opposed to this picture. Talking of the spear, I guess that'd be the only major change to the datasheet, to add a melter gun onto one of the Guardian spear profiles. Looks like this is the same standard issue one as the Custodian Guard with Pyrothite spears that you get from Forge World have, just literally a melter gun profile instead of the more bolt sort of profile on the standard Guardian spears. I'd say it's not awful, but maybe a little bit of a side grade. Looks like you lose the assault keyword and it's pretty short ranged, and I wouldn't necessarily rate the firepower as being particularly better or worse. Perhaps actually the bigger boost that this model probably entails to the standard shield captain on foot is that you now have a loadout that both has a shield and a spear on the same model, as opposed to the shield having to be paired with the sentinel blade. That means that you can kind of have your cake and eat it with the damage and defense sort of profiles. You get the big spear stats, but also the extra wound of the shield. So I feel like this guy might be the optimal way to field the shield captain. So if you wanted to do one on the cheap, it probably wouldn't be too hard. Just get hold of a melter gun, attach it to a guardian spear, and use a shield part, and you could very easily do a kit bash to one of these. As mentioned, I feel like perhaps one of the biggest, most anticipated box sets of this release might be the Custodian Battleforce. Looks like both Custodes and Orks come with a Battleforce box set to launch the faction, and apparently this one will drop prior to the Codex launch. In this box set, you get the new captain with the Pyrothite Spear, 5 Custodian Wardens, 6 Terminators, and 6 Virtus Praetors. As with that Watchers of the Gate box set that we had a little while back, it does basically seem like a Custodian army in one box, and it is tailoring to things that haven't been quite as on ready discount as previously. Large amounts of Terminators and the Wardens finally being in a discount box set, I feel like that might make this a bit more interesting for some. Otherwise, it also seems like it goes pretty well with the current Custodes Combat Patrol box set, which gets you a lot of Sisters of Silence and the standard Custodian Guard, neither of which are here. Between the two of them, I guess you might wind up with a slight overabundance of bikers maybe compared with what you might want, particularly if you've got multiple copies of the Combat Patrol. Overall though, I still think that this one will be of great interest to people. 3 out of 5 of the main Custodian plastic kits plus the new character. It adds up to 1,230 points in the box, even if you're building no extra shield captains from the bikers or the Terminators. If you did build up a couple of shield captains between the two sets, it does look like you might be able to just about get to 2,000 points between this and one single current combat patrol. Finally, for the Custodes, we do have their Codex cover reveal, similar sort of art to the last one with a different background as they've often done with the 10th Codexes. So far no major hints as to any other new rules for the faction yet. I guess they'll be adding detachments as the main offering for it. I'm not sure I'd be too hopeful of any new units for the army though, given that their only model release looks like it's essentially going to be a war gear option for the captain. Moving on to the Orks next, and of course the headline act here is the Big Mek. It was clear that from the December previews that this guy was going to be some sort of mech in an exosuit type thing, and that's exactly what it is. Apparently the branding on it though is that he's literally just called a Big Mek, so this will be the standard model to represent the Big Mek in the Orky range now, I guess differentiating him from things like the guy in the Mega Armor, the Shock Attack Gun one, and the Custom Force Field one if he survives into the Codex. In previous days, the Ork Big Mek was usually just a bigger orc, maybe sort of knob size on foot. In this revamped version though, Games Workshop's reimagined him as an orky exosuited character, big stompy legs and piston-driven arms and things, able to carry a lot more tech into battle. I'm a bit less certain as to the eventual pricing on this guy, given that he's really quite a big character miniature with some big weapon options. I feel like he could be as much as £37.50 or $60, That should be the same as, say, Lord Solar Leontus for the Imperial Guard. Hopefully if Games Workshop is feeling a little bit more generous than that, he could be a fair bit less. Taking a closer look at the model, I must admit I think it's quite a fun one for the Orks. I feel like he'll be quite a popular mini. Unlike the Custodian character, he gets some pretty significant war gear options. You can trade out that tractor blaster that you can see pictured top right for a more standard custom Mega Blaster. The custom Mega Blaster is likely going to be more efficient against tanks, though the tractor blaster has some fun rules against fly, as we'll see in a second. In his other arm, he gets a close combat weapon, either a hydraulic claw or a driller on the arm. In their flavor text, they said that the drill will be better against carving through enemy tanks and bulkheads. Might be something with the anti-vehicle type special rule, or just a profile that's better at killing big stuff than medium infantry, perhaps. Otherwise, looks like he's also got a choice of head swaps as well. You can have the more sort of battle cry one on the bottom left, or the grouchy mech doing business on the top right. Otherwise, he is sort of covered in all sorts of fun orc mech details. He's got some tools and things slung off his belt. It's got cyborg bits on the big arm that's bearing the tractor gun, an orc mech box pole type thing, and some interesting teleport gubbins slung over his back. Again, like the Custodian character, we've got a couple of rules teasers for him. The tractor blaster, I must admit I'm not the most enthused by the profile. I feel like for a gun that looks quite so big and dangerous, it maybe should average a bit more damage than this. It looks like you only get the one shot with anti-fly 3+ and devastating wounds, so if you do hit anything with fly, then it's likely going to take some nasty damage. But unfortunately, you only get the one shot, so if this guy's just wandering around, then you might average hitting with this guy just once in every 3 turns, even if when he does hit something with fly, it's going to leave a mark. Still might not necessarily mean that he's a bad model for damage output or anything like that. Though I do feel like with that sort of average damage profile, the big gun doesn't look really quite as dangerous as it might look on the model. The other interesting thing that he gets are those teleport things that look like they're sort of similar to the shock attack gun. This one's apparently called a shock booster. It allows you to reroll advances for the unit and allows the unit to move through enemy models and terrain, so you could have them jump around a bit or do things like fallbacks without having to test desperate escape. Not sure how much that would come into play for the move over models thing if he still only moves like 5 or 6 inches base. Could still be handy in the right situation though. The reroll advance thing could genuinely be handy enough to get his mob onto midfield objectives turn 1 a bit more reliably. Will be interesting to find out his other rules and whether he gives anything else to his squad or if he's mainly going to be about repairing the vehicles. As mentioned though, the launch box that he comes in is a bit of a weird one. Rather appropriately, this one is called the Stomper Boys box set. In the box you get the new Big Mek, rather dwarfed at the front there by the absolutely enormous Stomper standing next to him. And besides that you get 10 looters that you can also build as burners, the Ork Truck and 10 Ork Boys. It does look like they're the newer kit of the Ork Boys with these slightly more limited war gear options where you don't get enough sluggers or choppers to arm the entire squad. I feel like compared with the Custodes one, this one isn't quite as an easy a purchase for everyone getting into Orks. It really does hinge on whether or not you actually want that enormous Stomper, as that is going to make up the majority of the value of the box, and also the majority of the points cost as well. As they mentioned in their article, the Stomper is an absolutely enormous model. It dwarfs Imperial Knights, and is basically a walking dustbin. I do think it's really quite a fun centerpiece model, though it is quite a big project to take on. I believe it's the single biggest plastic kit in all of Warhammer 40k. Unfortunately for Ork players, the thing has been basically eternally weak in game if you have one, generally overcosted by a significant margin for as far back as I can remember. Perhaps partly deliberately to stop every Ork force just building around one giant effigy of Gork or possibly Morg. I guess that literally could change at any Codex release or balance pass. Maybe they'll give it something interesting this time around, though I wouldn't hold my breath. In the box set it looks like there's around about 1100 points worth of Orks, which is really quite a lot. That would depend on the final cost of the mech, whether you build the looters as burners or not, and if anything changes in a radical way in the Codex. I feel like that particular stat is a bit misleading though, as it is ridiculously heavily carried by that Stomper. That's 800 points of model right there, and if you weren't using that in more standard games it means that the rest of the box set is around about 350 points or so, which isn't very much. Overall, maybe a little annoying that the first place to buy the mech also depends on buying a Stomper, which not everyone's going to want. Might mean that there's plenty of players waiting for the individual release, unless they do want the enormous Ork Mini Titan on the go. Finally for the Orks, as with the Custodes, we've got the Codex cover as well. Again, Games Workshop playing it cagey with any rules teasers or previews so far. No major hints as to any rules or detachments. I feel like the Orks in particular are one where I really hope they get their detachments right. Ork armies tend to have a lot of good playstyles with things like Dread Mob or Speed Freaks or Beast Snaggers or more, and it would be really good if they managed to actually make them somewhat balanced against each other for once, which they haven't really managed to do at many points in the Orky history. I guess the Big Mek datasheets might need reorganising a little bit to reflect the new gear. It could just be that this guy's the new thing added in. I might be a little bit apprehensive as to certain resin characters surviving, as with the Necrons. There are a few resin miniatures in the Orky range that could be at risk if they don't get plastic updates or anything. Overall, objectively, it's not too bad for Warhammer 40k previews there. We've got 2 fun new character miniatures, 2 big Battleforce box sets, and the announcement of the next 2 codexes. So I feel like that might be tempered a little bit by Orks and Custodes players likely not getting any other releases this time around unless Games Workshop pulls surprises for us. Let me know what you think down in the video description though. As mentioned, if you would like to enter in for the Orks or Custodes Battleforce giveaway, that will be happening in April. 6 winners for this one, and each one of those can either pick the Custodes box or the Orks box. As per normal with the giveaways here on the channel, there's 2 equal ways to enter, both of them links down in the video description. Either you can support the channel on Patreon for any amount each month. It is the main thing that allows me to keep these videos coming, and it puts you into the draw automatically for each of the prize draws each and every month. I will keep the good stuff coming. Alternatively, you can support via social media completely for free. To do that, do these 3 actions: subscribe to the YouTube channel, like the Facebook page, and then to actually enter the draw, a post appears on the 1st of April on the Facebook page. Respond to that post with a photo of any 40k mini or imagery, along with your name and the date handwritten within the same photo. The last bit just to deter any Facebook bots or spammers. The post is active for 24 hours from midnight UK time. Then I put all the entries together on Patreon and Facebook, do the draw with a random number generator, and we'll be picking out the 6 winners. The results getting announced on the channel update video on YouTube around the 4th of April. I'll post out the miniatures to you guys wherever you might be in the world as soon as I receive orders for them. Obviously, we don't know exactly when they're going to come out yet. If for some reason supply should be abnormally low, I might need to buy the individual kits and models separately, but I will get you these miniatures exactly as they are, in one form or another. In any case, feel free to check out the Patreon page if you'd like to support, or the Facebook page, both linked in the video description. There'll be further giveaways each and every month. The Crude one has had its draw already been done. That'll be announced on the 4th of March in the channel update video. In any case, look forward to hearing your thoughts on the new Custodian and the new Orks. Feel free to subscribe to Orks Tactics if you'd like to see more like this. I'll certainly keep up with Games Workshop's news, rumours and releases as they come. Finally, as mentioned, if you'd like to help support the channel and be part of allowing me to continue to make these videos, the channel's Patreon page is linked down in the video description. Any support by you guys is enormously appreciated with that. It is what allows me to do this as my main thing. Channel patrons do get a few advantages: seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things come next on the channel, and automatic entry into those giveaways each month. That's linked down in the video description if you'd like to check it out. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.